Hello, 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 and welcome to today's program brought to you by the U.S. Botanic Garden. My name is Courtney Burrs, the online education specialist with the Learning and Outreach team here at the Garden. We are so happy to have you joining us for fall recipes, roasted beet and carrot salad with burrata with baked winter squash casserole. It's an online demonstration with Danielle Cook. Danielle Cook is a culinary educator, nutritionist, cookbook author, and presenter. She has been leading cooking demonstrations in the Washington, D.C. area for over 20 years. She directs her own teaching kitchen where she instructs individuals on taking charge of their nutritional health, all while having fun cooking. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today to spring into fall, and
Oh,
enjoy
yeah.
some of these wonderful ingredients that are all around us. I've got the color of the season right here on my cutting board. So Courtney gave you the introduction. I don't think I need to go any further than to just add to that I have been in this seasonal foods workspace for many, many years. I love what I do, and I love bringing you all new ideas and fielding questions about the true value of our food that can be so incredibly healing and helpful to our wellness and to our health. So without further ado, I'm going to, we have two recipes that we're going to work on today. And I have a whole bunch of really lovely ingredients, and I want to start with the casserole, the baked casserole, which is actually a recipe that I've tweaked a little bit from a cookbook that I have been enjoying over the summer and in the fall. And this is a great recipe because I think it's going to be my go-to this winter. It can be made with any kind of squash, and we're going to work on, I'm going to show you how to deal with a butternut squash. This is a red curry squash, and so whatever you find at the farmer's market is going to be just fine to use. It's up to you. And of course, if you're not brave enough to tackle peeling and cubing your own squash, the grocery stores always have it ready to go. So don't hold back making this recipe just because you're feeling challenged about how to deal with a winter squash. So I'm going to flip over my camera to the overhead so we can actually get going on this, tackling the difficulty of working with winter squash. So on my overhead, our second recipe is going to feature these carrots and beautiful beets. But for right now, let's just take a look at what's going on here. We're not going to actually use this one. I'm going to work with a butternut today. So I'm going to set this to the side and show you what I picked up at the farmer's market. You would recognize this as a butternut, but have you ever seen a conjoined butternut? So this is Mother Nature at her finest. Twins. We have twins. And this is just what happens randomly, you probably wouldn't find this in a grocery store, but in the farmer's market, we find all kinds of shapes, and they're all equally good. So I'm gonna just give you a quick overview of how I like to prep my butternut squash. Usually I only have one. Today I have two, but here we go. I'm gonna start by separating these with a big knife, and I find it's often helpful to have a few different kinds of knives on hand, because sometimes these squash can really be a challenge depending on the thickness of their peel. So we've got these separated. The other thing is, often butternut squashes will have a very big bulb part, which is inside where the seeds are kept. I like to look for ones that are longer in the neck because there's more flesh. These are all solid flesh up here, whereas the ones with the big bulbs are a little more challenging to work with. But what I like to do, this is small and quite manageable, but I'm going to go ahead and just, if you envision a much longer, bigger butternut squash, I separate the bulb part from the straight neck part. And I do that again.
So Danielle,
Yes.
Yeah, so we want to know, can you use, is it delicata squash?
Delicata squash.
Yes.
Yes, you can. And delicata squash actually does not need to be peeled because, as the name would
A little
suggest,
softer, yeah.
yes, it's delicate.
Uh-huh.
It's the most delicate of the winter squashes. It's almost a hybrid between the summer and the winter.
Okay.
Delicata squash are out now. In another month, you probably won't see them because their exterior flesh just doesn't, it has a shorter harvest season, and the exterior flesh is more delicate and it tends to decompose and rot more quickly. But you could absolutely use a delicata squash in this. So the next step is the peeling, right? And this can be done in a couple of ways. If you've got a really good sharp peeler, you can do that. Use that. And this is looking really good. Sometimes you get a very thick, much thicker skin, in which case it's easier to, it might be easier to work at it with a paring knife and just go down and cut as close to the skin as possible. It's totally your choice. There's no right or wrong. It's what your comfort is in the kitchen. I will say that you can see the difference in the camera here, the whiter part and the more orange part. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of greenish white when you start peeling. You want to peel back till you start seeing that bright orange flesh. Okay. If you get a butternut that has a fair amount of green lines, and this one is very nice and ripe because I'm peeling back and I don't see any green lines, but the green lines can sometimes indicate a bit of bitterness, so you want to get around that. And then essentially it doesn't take that long, and the advantage to doing it this way, besides you get a nice little workout, but nutritionally, there's nothing better than taking the whole food just as nature grew it and then cutting it down or peeling it. There's nothing wrong with this stuff, the ones that are already pre-prepped in the grocery store, but they have been sitting a bit longer, so they are going to lose a little bit of their nutritional density. Just as an FYI, but I totally understand that the convenience of getting these, of having them, having the prepped ones. Okay, and then you're going to cut. This has a little bit, because it was joined to the other one, there's a little bit of a roughness here, like it was trying to break apart or something. So we're not going to use that part. I'm going to go ahead and just cut that off.
We have some folks in the chat who are fans of honey nut squash.
Oh, isn't that a great one? That's been out just a few years. Oh my gosh, it's so fabulous. Yeah. And yeah, they're great because they also tend to come in a slightly smaller size. Mm-hmm. So if you don't want to make a whole large casserole like this makes, then you can cut the recipe in half and then get a smaller honey nut and use that. So these are going to be chunks about that size. I have some that have already been prepped up and cooked because of the sake of time. But basically, yes, you're going to want to just do cubes, medium-sized cubes. The other great winter squash is the kaboka, which has a beautiful, beautiful deep orange flesh. The red curry, if you roast it long enough, you can actually, and if you cut wedges, you could actually, you don't have to peel the red curry. The skin does get nicely softened in a good roast. So here, bright orange, what's in there?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, these are called, the compound in here is called a flavonoid, and that's where all your foods that are the yellow and orange, that's where they come from. They're in a family of antioxidants. We hear that word a lot, which is translates as good for you, antioxidant. Okay, on this side, same thing. You're just going to go around and do the peeling however you want, or usually, truthfully, on this one, I usually prefer just to do the knife because of the shape of the butternut. I tend to just switch over to a knife on this one. I find it's a little bit quicker. I have a little bit better control on the spherical shape of the squash. And you can see you need to have a good paring knife though. And if you're not
For
comfortable,
sure.
yeah, if you're not comfortable, you know, really guiding a sharp knife, you might want to stick with the peeler as long as you have a good peeler. But this basically,
Yeah. And a lot of good energy. Because
yep.
so what if one day we just wanted to just knock all of our prep work, just feeling extra strong that day, and we wanted to knock out all of our prep work? We have a question in the chat about freezing. Will frozen butternut chunks hold their nutritional value?
Well, yes and no. Just as any vegetable in the freezer, over time
Hmm.
will that nutritional value will decrease a bit. But
Yeah.
butternut squash, like all winter squashes, are great if you, like you said, if you want to get in there and do a bunch of prepping and you have a lot of extra chunks, they do freeze beautifully. And so, you know, that is a good way of kind of getting ahead of the game and just having some fresh prepped squash on hand.
Yeah.
So here we have the inside, and then this, of course, has to be dug out. And that, you can use your peeler, you can use a spoon, whatever suits, whatever works for you. And I'm just going to scoop that into my little trash. You want to get all the stringy stuff out, just like you would if you were doing a Halloween pumpkin, right? Not that this is, it's not that it's not good for you. It's just, it's a little stringy and a little bit, you know, you don't really need that part. Okay, and then I'm going to lob off the end here.
Oh yeah, this is when you have a good sous chef.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure, and a good knife.
Yep, need both. Good sous chef and a good knife.
Uh-huh.
Who gets to be the sous chef in your house?
Oh man, I think I'm the sous chef.
Yeah, yeah, that's usually how it
I
ends up
think
being.
I'm the sous chef.
All
Just
right,
got a couple of
so
hats.
there we go. It wasn't that big of a hassle. I know I maybe made it look easy because I do this a lot, but you know, give it a try. It's really, it's kind of worth you know, tasting the difference, because I think this is really, the butternut is so sweet. These are so fresh. You really do tell the difference. So the next step on this is you're going to put these in a saute pan with a lid. Very important. So a low kind of skillet. Heat your skillet a bit with a little olive oil and just put these in there. Little sprinkling of salt. Put the lid on and cook it at a medium-low heat for about 15-20 minutes until they get very soft, okay? And I have some all ready to go, which we'll use in just a moment. I'm going to set this aside and talk about the next step to this recipe. Is we're using a rice as part of the filler. And you have options, as always. I like options. You can use a risotto arborio, which is what is delineated in the recipe. This is a white rice. It's kind of chewier. If you're familiar with the dish risotto, that it makes, it's a very gluten, not glutinous is really the term I should use. So it's got a very good, nice, chewy texture to it. It's higher in starch and gluten-free, but higher in starch. In any event, the other options you can use, which I'm loving right now, is a brown rice. You can also use a regular white short grain rice, but I've been using brown rice for this. So what you're going to do is follow the directions on whichever kind of grain you're using, whichever rice you're using. Follow the directions on the box, but cut back the cooking time by a minute or two, because we're going to mix all of this into our casserole dish and bake it off. So you don't want the rice to be fully cooked. I mean, if you do end up having it fully cooked, you know, it's totally salvageable. But the benefit to having it sort of al dente is that it's going to go through a second cooking in the oven with egg and cream, or half and half in this case. Therefore, you want to give it, you want it to continue to have some texture when you bite into it, which is why we cut back the cooking time just by a little bit. If that makes
Danielle,
sense.
how about grains like spelt or is bulgur?
Those are both totally acceptable. The other wonderful grain for this would be quinoa.
Okay.
You still want to cook everything about 3/4 of the way there. Spelt is going to take a little bit longer unless you get a quick cook spelt, but wheat berries would be great as well. But if you need to go really a different venue on gluten-free, you can use the quinoa. Now we are going to be using some breadcrumbs in this, and we'll talk about that when I get to it. But let's keep moving along. So just envision you've got your squash is now simmering, your rice is now simmering, and then we're going to get the midpoint, the liquid part of the dish. So we're going to use a couple of eggs, 2 eggs, and you're going to just whip those. Fork is fine. And to this, I'm going to add my 1/2 and 1/2. So this is going to create, when it bakes off, it's going to create a bit of a sort of custardy consistency. This is what's going to make the casserole kind of fluff up and come together. So you've got really like a quiche with no crust, a quiche-less crust in a way. But our filler is going to be obviously the rice.
And for our non-dairy folk.
I'm sorry?
Any ideas? I said, and for the non-dairy folk, any ideas for us?
Well, this is going to be a tough one because the casserole, the whole purpose of the casserole is going to be to create sort of a custard filling of sorts. And that is done with eggs and cream traditionally.
Yeah.
So, you know, you could go on a completely different, the end result would be different. You could do this by baking it off with some vegetable broth and not doing the eggs and the cream at all. But you're not going to, it's not going to be sort of like pie-like, like you're going to see this you can just break out a chunk like you would cut a piece of quiche. You're not going to get quite that consistency when you eliminate the eggs and the cream. But that's not to say you're not going to, you still have a delicious end product with the fresh ingredients and the seasonings.
Yeah,
but it won't be quite the same. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so we've got that ready to go. And the next step I want to show you is to prepare our breadcrumbs, and then we'll put everything together. So to prepare the breadcrumbs, we're going to move in our food processor, and the breadcrumbs are going to consist of lots of fresh herbs. And so we've got thyme, rosemary, garlic. So I'm going to I went ahead and just pinched off the rosemary leaves from the stalks, and I pulled the thyme leaves off off their stalks. If anybody wants me to show you how I do that, just drop a note in the chat. But if you're familiar with working with fresh rosemary and fresh thyme, you probably have, done this before, of picking all the beautiful little leaves off. So that goes in. And then we need to also help make the breadcrumbs bright green. We're going to put in about a cup of parsley. And I'm literally going to just yank the parsley stem leaves off if I can get at it. The stems have flavor too. So don't be shy about having to pick off all the leaves. That's not necessary. If you've got a big stalk like that, you can definitely just put that to the side. But essentially, you just want a good, nicely packed cup of the parsley leaves. Okay, and we're gonna whirl that. Just pulse that. Okay, and then to that, we're gonna add breadcrumbs. So what I have here is some baguette slices that have been sitting overnight. It's about 4 ounces. You can use ciabatta, you can use Italian, baguette's good, sourdough's great. You can use a multi-grain if you like, whatever you have. I mean, I would not use a challah because that's just kind of too sweet for this. And there's going to be a lot of sweetness in the casserole because the butternut squash is so sweet. And if any of you do make this with the honey nut, again, that's an even sweeter winter squash than the butternut. So we're making fresh breadcrumbs here, and these are going to freeze really well if you don't use them all, either on this or if you don't use them for other reasons. You can put them in the fridge for about 3 or 4 days in a good airtight container, or stick them in the freezer. So we're going to now pulse this up. Okay, bright green. It's going to need a little bit more. I'm going to add some oil. Just a couple tablespoons. Very nice. And they are truly like electric green. See, look at that. Bright, bright green. So this is going to be our topping. And we are now ready to pull this all together. So I'm going to bring back my mixing bowl here, my egg.
Now, Danielle, we have some questions about substitutes.
Yes.
If you don't have a food processor, can you substitute 4 ounces of panko, or is that too dry?
Oh, no, that's fine. That's totally fine. I'm glad somebody asked that question because, again, don't feel like you can't make this because of the breadcrumb part. You can totally substitute panko. I would not use regular breadcrumbs because they're smaller in texture and a lot drier, but the panko will be just fine.
And what about for parsley? If we have some fresh celery from the farmer's market, could that sub for parsley?
No, that's really not an herb. The parsley, even if you were to use a celery leaves on there, those are going to be bitter. They're going to get bitter. It's going to cause a bitterness. So you do want to do parsley, or if you don't have parsley and you have the herbs, and you can also substitute dry herbs. I mean, there's something with the fresh herbs is a fantastic pop of flavor. And the color is great too, but you know, you can replace as you need if you don't have the fresh thyme on hand. Okay, here is our al dente brown rice, short grain brown rice. This is this is what I'm into these days. This would also be really great with a mix of brown rice and wild rice. You know, that would be a nice combination. So I'm going to go ahead and add that into my mixture here. And this was, you know, a 1/4 cup, so it does double in size. And the thing is, you want to be showcasing your squash in this more than the rice. The rice is just a companion. This is not about a rice casserole. This is about a butternut squash casserole. And then we have here our beautiful cubed and cooked. And there is a fair amount of water that came off of that, but that's okay. That's going to give flavor and moisture to the casserole. And we're going to mush down the cubes just a little bit once it gets in there. So that gets added.
So no need to drain it. We're just going to...
Well, as I instructed in the recipe, if you've got a lot of water, yes, you want to crank up the heat and evaporate. But here we're down to just a couple tablespoons. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. If your squash is very moist and you've got a 1/2 cup of liquid, yes, you want to try to cook some of it off.
Okay, so we want it moist. If we decided to roast it in the oven, will we have like the same sort of outcome, or would you say that roasting might not be a good alternative?
Well, I prefer to saute this, to have it cook slowly in just a little bit of olive oil. You can use a roasted squash, yes.
Okay.
But what you want to pull it out and before it's super, super soft.
Okay.
And you're also going to get more of a puree, a chunky puree, whereas this, you can see we're still working with, I'm going to break down just some of it, but you want the chunks. You want a combination of some nice chunks, and you're not going to get that if you roast the squash and then scoop out all the flesh. It's really about, more than anything, it's about a texture thing. So, you're up to you, your call. Okay. I'm going to just recheck, make sure we're on course with that. I haven't forgotten anything yet. Okay, I put a little sea salt when I cook the squash, so I'm not going to add that just yet. There's already some in there. What we do need is a good amount of Parmesan cheese, grated Parmesan cheese, 2/3 of a cup. So that goes in. Again, back to your trying to remove the dairy. This is a little bit of a harder one to work with just because you do have the eggs, you've got the half and half, and now you've got cheese. So, you can spin this in a dairy-free version. It's just going to be a different texture altogether. And then what I like to put in here is a little bit of nutmeg. Just a tad, like a quarter of a teaspoon. Nutmeg, a little bit goes a long way. If you overdo, it can cause a very distinct bitterness in the dish. So a quarter of a teaspoon is a fair amount for this, but it does holds up nicely. And then we've got so much going on with the breadcrumbs. So much flavor in those breadcrumbs that this is a really, really nice complement. Okay, so it might look a little like wet and mushy, but that's good. That's what we want. So there it is. Now we're going to go ahead and put it into our baking dish. And this is an optional step. I kind of like this. I've got a clove of garlic here, and I'm going to just slice it in half.
Oh, looks like we getting a pro tip here.
Little pro tip.
Oh, yeah.
Bottom. And if you want, you can take this and then put it through your garlic mincer, which I'll do in just a second. So you're going to rub the sides. You're just going to infuse your baking dish. And you can actually, if you do this, you will see the oils of the garlic come onto the bottom of your baking dish. So there is definitely flavor. And boy, I can smell it. Smell it, smell it. And, well, I don't have my garlic press right in front of me. Here it is. All right. Almost done, and then we can take questions and move on to the second one. I'm going to not waste this. I'm going to go ahead and just put it into my butternut mix. Why not, right? Okay, and then we're going to drizzle a little bit of oil. Why do I do this? Because this will give it, this will allow the, it's almost like doing the butter and flour or the shortening and flour on a cake on the bottom of a cake pan. This will help the casserole release when you go to cut it. It will help release it from the sides and not be too sticky. Just give it a little bit of a rub around the edges. So this dish, you can make it, bake it, and it can hold great overnight. You can warm it up in a very slow, gentle oven. And so it's a good make-ahead thing. Keep that in mind when, you know, you're having company through the holidays, or it's just a great, you know, this would also be great to just round out leftovers across the holidays, extra turkey and no more mashed potatoes. Make yourself a little casserole, winter squash casserole.
About how long will it hold, Danielle?
So once it's cooked, I wouldn't let it sit in this stage for very long. I mean, a few hours, okay, but you don't want to, I wouldn't, maybe You could maybe get away with an overnight. I've never done it that way. I've prepared it and popped it in the fridge and then baked it off. Once it's baked off, it's good. It's good for 4 or 5 days, no problem.
Okay.
And then, lastly, we're gonna just decorate with. This smells
beautiful.
amazing. The smell in this is just, I can't tell you, the thyme, the rosemary. It's just like, wow. And a little bit of garlic in there. It's just like coming up my nostrils. You need about, I think I said about a half a cup. This is going to be more than that. I mean, if you like that bready topping kind of a thing, you might want to do more.
Oh, yeah.
And then before it goes in the oven, you're going to want to just give it a little bit of a drizzle of olive oil. And I didn't put any salt in the breadcrumbs. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a very light, because this is we haven't salted anything except as I mentioned, I did put a little bit of salt to get the squash cooking, because the salt will draw the water out of the vegetables. So I did put a little bit in there, but that was it. So I'm just going to do a little sprinkling of sea salt on the top. This goes in the oven for about, until it's golden brown, 30 to 40 minutes, maybe half an hour is really pretty much where it's at. And then I'll show you when it's all, the smaller version here, all baked up.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty green, from the breadcrumbs, but it's all beautifully crusty around the exterior. And this is wonderful at room temperature or served warm. You do want to let it sit a few minutes when it comes out, because it needs to cool down and kind of relax. You can certainly have it like really at room temperature or tepid warm. It doesn't have to be hot, hot, hot.
Oh yeah, this squash has some fans in the chat. I tell you what. It looks perfect for Thanksgiving. We're hearing holy moly, that looks scrumptious. I agree. For sure.
Any questions that I can answer?
Yeah, we do still have a couple of questions here about this beautiful and I know super fragrant casserole. One of the questions is about the roasting, right? So we kind of talked about if we could roast it, but I want to be specific and talk about if we chopped it up and we put it on a sheet pan in the oven. Would that change the texture? Because even when we saw you whipping it up, we wondered about the texture. Is this like fork tender that we're looking for, or just a little bit harder than that?
Excellent question.
So
you want fork tender is what you're looking for.
Okay.
And what happens with the method that I used for cooking is a little bit of olive oil, and then in the skillet with the lid on, is it steam cooks itself. Okay. So the moisture stays under the lid, and you keep creating more moisture, and that makes for a very tender squash. So when you oven roast, you get a different texture, and you're drawing the heat and the moisture out of the squash cubes in a very hot roasting oven. It still is delicious. And, there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. You may find you want to add a little bit more half and half, because it's the roasted squash is going to be drier than the skillet cooked squash.
Okay. And this idea about some different types, right? It says, I'm looking at these carrot top greens. Our folks have been using them as a substitute for parsley and making chimichurri. Should these be used in the breadcrumb recipe?
The carrot top greens? Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that, but people make pesto out of the carrot top greens.
Okay.
Beautiful bunch here. But yeah, you could definitely do that. I would also keep some thyme in there. The carrot top greens that have a very distinct flavor to them, but very complementary to the to the winter squash. So I think that's an excellent idea. I think you could probably also You could keep the rosemary, but I think because of the flavoring in the carrot top greens, I would actually probably back out the rosemary and just stick with some thyme and the green. But yeah, I'd love to hear how that comes out.
Oh, fantastic. And just two more questions before you go on to our next recipe
Okay.
here about preparation. So, can we make ahead and freeze? How does that go? If we make it ahead of time, can we freeze it? And then, like, how do we reheat it? What's the best way to serve it again if we make it ahead?
So you could, but here's the thing. If you make it ahead and freeze it, if you're not planning to eat it for like quite a while, I mean, this will hold up, you know, a week, 5 to 7 days in the refrigerator it's going to be just fine.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, if you really are thinking you want to use it a month from now, yes, you would want to freeze it. And then the reheating process would be to pull it out of the freezer the night before and stick it in the fridge. Let it thaw. Okay. Even if it means getting it out early in the morning and putting it on your countertop for a few hours, like probably, I would say you're going to need at least 3 hours or 4 hours to completely thaw it, and then warm it in 325 oven uncovered.
Okay.
For about 30 minutes, I would say.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. And then just as far as prepping, can you prep it a day before, store it in the fridge, and then bake it the next day? You kind of hit on that, but just so we can make sure.
Yeah, I kind of hit on that. I would say,
Yeah.
if you're going to do it that way, then get it prepped later in the day before. I don't want you having the liquid, the raw eggs and the cheese and the cream sitting in those ingredients for more than, you know, maximum 12 hours. You should bake it off. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be, you're definitely going to cause an issue, but it's a texture thing, and it's how the chemistry happens when the eggs and the cream are together. Excuse me, with those other ingredients. So if you hold it overnight and then bake it off in the morning, I think you'd be fine.
Okay.
But I wouldn't let it go a whole lot more than 12 hours uncooked.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Thank you, Danielle. And I think we are ready for roasted beet and carrot salad.
Okay, well, we're going to have to blow through this one. There's so many wonderful, excellent questions. Please keep them coming. And yes, okay, let's go back to talking about carrots and beets. And I'm going to take you back to my overhead camera because that's the easiest way to show you what I like to do and what I'm talking about. So we're going to start with beets. And here, again, from the farmer's market, big, beautiful bunch with the greens. So the greens are totally edible if you're not familiar with handling fresh beets. I don't need all of these. I'm just going to demo one because we have some already ready to go. But so with the beet greens, we're not going to use them in this recipe. However, you absolutely could, and I'll get into that. I'll get into that as we go through it. But so the anatomy of the beet, you've got these baby little beet greens at the heart of it in the center. Most of the grocery stores will just lob off the beet root and sell that because these are long. And like I said, a lot of people don't bother with them or don't know what to do with them. But what I like to do is always salvage these, even if I'm using the beet for one reason, I do not toss the greens. This one, you see, is a little bit sad looking, so I probably wouldn't hold on to that. And it's only because it was, you know, there's storage in the refrigerator. But when you bring them home from the market, they are usually going to be, the greens are going to be very, very perky. And what I do is you're going to separate them. And then with the greens, what I do is I just capture the green part. I mean, some of the really baby ones right in the center are going to have a little bit of a stem, and that's fine. That's fine. But on the bigger outer pieces, you've got this very long stem. It's kind of like, it's in the family as beets are in the same family as Swiss chard. So if you've ever worked with Swiss chard, and they're also in the same family as spinach. So, you know, just envision that. And what you're going to really hang on to is the is the green part, which you can lightly steam. You can eat them raw as well. And that's one of the amazing things about, this vegetable, this wonderful root vegetable. It's great raw. It's great cooked. It's great pickled. Lots of uses of it. But for this purpose, we're going to roast them off, and you have a couple of options. The easy option is take your beets just as I just take the stems off. Don't do anything with them. Stick them get a big piece of tin foil, put them in the foil, crunch up the foil, make a sort of a tent, and roast them off in the oven. No water, no salt, no nothing. Just roast it inside a foil packet. Depending on the size, they'll need about 40 minutes. Bigger ones would need an hour or so. And then once you take them out and cool them down, you can easily, with the help of a paring knife, you can easily scrape off you just cut the ends and the skin comes right off. And that's a really great method to storing them as well. You can roast them and then not peel them until you're ready to use them, because they will keep longer in their skins. So when you get a fresh bunch home from the market like this or the grocery store, don't do anything with them until you're really ready. It's like the skins, like with any of the vegetables, it's a protective outer layer. But for today's purposes, we're going to roast these together. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off the ends. Oh, look, we have a chiogo. This is beautiful. These are the swirly ones. So that was a lucky find. I wonder if this one, I can tell from the skin is a little bit lighter than the other ones. But I was asking the farmer if these were mixed, and he said, oh, I don't know, I didn't plant them, but if you don't like them, you can take a different bunch. I said, no, I like them. I like the difference. This is going to make for a very, very pretty salad. Yes, if you can get different colored beets, that works too. So very easy to peel.
Beautiful. Much of the appeal of going to the farmer's market is being able to talk directly to the farmer, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Our root vegetables have been giving us all kinds of surprises today.
I bet.
That's gorgeous.
Look at this. Is this not gorgeous? Just beautiful. So we're going to do this. We're going to cut it into wedges.
Now we have a question in the chat about root vegetables.
Yes.
Is it true that with root vegetables, carrots, beets, turnips, etc., it's best to separate the root from the greens and store them separately in the crisper?
I do the opposite. I always leave the greens on. I think it keeps the carrot fresher. The carrot will take the nutrients from the roots, and maybe that's the reason for separating them. But these will stay harder longer and keep their sweetness if you keep it intact. So I don't separate them until I'm ready to use them. That's my rule of thumb.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now this is a red beet. So we're going to do a combination here. And, I hear a lot from people about, oh, gosh, beets are so messy to deal with, and then your hands get stained. But the truth is, this is a very water-soluble vegetable, as they all are. And you're going to get a little bit red, yes, when you're just doing this. But I guarantee you, by the time you finish cleaning up your prep area and washing off your cutting board, take a look at your fingers, and I bet they're back to their original skin color. So this is not a permanent dye issue. It's just some pigment.
There you go. And I think that's just what we'll get with beets, unless they're golden. We have some fans of golden beets and Kyogia beets as well.
Well, that's what we've got. Okay, so we're going to get a sheet pan.
Kyogia.
You're better at this than me. Kyogia.
I think I've heard it in several ways.
Yeah. But all we know is that it is a gorgeous beet. And it's going to make what I am going to show you when we put together our salad today. The ones that I've already roasted off, I did not have the nice surprise of finding a Kyogia. So we just have the red beets, but that's okay. That's okay. And, you know,
I love the look of it. I think that works.
yeah, what we want to be always focusing on is as much color in our foods as possible,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
All right, so I'm going to
Okay.
set this next to me, and then now to our beautiful, I have one already prepped up. I'll do another one, and then we really going to have to zoom through because we're going to be short on time. I did not peel these. These are organic. What I did do is I gave them a good scrub under the running water and loosen up any little hairs. You can peel if you want to, but there is nutrition in the you know, in the peels as well. So I like to try to not peel, and some people are peel people, but I'm not one of those. So I'm going to do also these wedges. The idea is to do wedges about the same size as what you've got for your beets. And you can do this step. You can do this step a day or two in advance. Roast them off and keep them in an airtight container in the refrigerator. Okay, so we've got a mix of those two. And what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to just dip my fingers in my little water bowl so I can start getting that dye off, that pigment. I am going to flavor this with a seasoning mix called za'atar. I don't know if you are familiar with it. I have to apologize if you're looking at my recipe. I missed an A in the name za'atar. It should have Z-A-A-T-A-R. This is a blend that originated in the Middle East, and it's a very herby blend of marjoram, oregano, thyme, and sesame seeds, and some salt. Now, different countries have adopted their version of it, like in Lebanon, Turkey, throughout the Middle East. And depending on if you like this and you want to look for it, read the ingredients, because some of them add salt, some of them add sumac, which is a wonderful, very lemony, bright red spice. But this is my new culinary joy this season. I'm going to be using za'atar in a lot of different things. And somehow I love the pairing with roasted root vegetables. So even if you don't make this salad, think about maybe trying a za'atar when you roast off winter vegetables. So I'm just going to leave that as is with a little drizzle of olive oil. And then this goes in a hot oven at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. Depending on the thicknesses of your root vegetables, you may need a little bit more, but don't overcook them. You want them, when you poke your knife in there, it wants to feel, you know, what we call knife tender. So not super soft, but also not so that the knife is still stuck inside the vegetable, inside the beet or the carrot. Okay, so then the next thing we're going to work on is our salad dressing, and then we're going to put this whole thing together. So the salad dressing, I've got it all lined up here for us, is going to consist of, let's set this next to me. I love working in jars when I can for salad dressings. I think it just makes things really easy, and you can just store whatever you don't need. You can just use and then pop the jar in the refrigerator. So here we have some minced shallot, which I adore in salad dressing. So this is one medium size. We don't need quite that much. I think I said like a small shallot. So we're going to put that in there. And then to that, we're going to add some tablespoon of minced thyme. So I picked all the little leaves off this, and then I gave it a good chop so that it's really very, very fine. It's going to infuse a lot of flavor into the salad dressing. You can use this salad dressing in you know, other things as well, but it's a great pairing because of the sweetness of the beets and so forth. And then we're going to add some lemon juice. You could also use apple cider vinegar. That would be great. Or you could use sort of a little bit of lemon and, you know, a tablespoon of balsamic. That's not out of the question either. Sweetness is going to be up to you. I'm going to go air on the lighter side. So this is going to be about a tablespoon. I've said 1 to 2 tablespoons. And then we do need a little salt to get the balance out there and pop that sweetness. So I'm just going to put a little, maybe a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. This is really a good salad with so much flavor. You don't need to put much salt in there, but I do like having salt in my salad dressings. I think it really does help bind the flavors. Good shake. The other thing is with this dressing, if you can make it in advance, even the day before, it's going to be better because the shallots will really infuse flavor into the dressing. So I would really recommend you start with the first step being make your salad dressing, ideally even the night before if you can, and then pop it in the fridge and then bring it up to room temperature before you dress the salad. And then we've added a 1/4 cup of oil.
Is that including the oil, Danielle? So should we let it sit in the refrigerator before we put the oil in, or we can do the oil and let it all sit?
You can do the oil and let it all sit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So that's basically our dressing, more than we need, but a good amount. And now we are going to put together our gorgeous salad. And that's going to be, start with a bowl of greens, market greens. Arugula is what I delineated, but it doesn't have to be that. See what looks good at the market. Side note is you can serve this warm with the steamed beet greens, okay? But then it becomes not really a salad as such. It's more like a warm side dish. So you could clean up your beet greens, saute them very gently, and then place your other vegetables on top. But here we have this, you can see the vegetables are have gotten darker just from the roasting process. And I'm gonna just lift them off the tray. And I like using my hands because this is just sort of me doing this for a number of years. I'm going to actually kind of do a layering here. So by that, I mean, I like to dress my, do a little bit of dressing. Let me just grab a spoon here. A little bit of dressing, very, very lightly dressed. Because I don't like my salads swimming in dressing. I want to taste what I've got going on here. So I'm going to just use maybe a tablespoon, not even, about a half a tablespoon, and just lightly mix those in.
That just looks so savory and yummy. Oh, man.
I know, it really does. So you get this by layering. What I mean by that is that we toss this and then some of the vegetables disappear underneath. And then you can finish it off. And this is like enough for 2 people. So you can certainly expand the amount. And I'm going to top it off with more color of the rest of these vegetables.
I would be sliding my vegetables all around that za'atar.
Yeah, definitely. And then for those of us who are cheese lovers, we have, just think, this is the winter version of tomato, mozzarella, and basil. We're going to use burrata, beautiful burrata, and just a few wedges. You don't want to overdo it, but it's just going to give you just the right amount of creaminess. Look at that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful chunk of burrata. Handle it carefully. You want to lay them on their side with so they don't totally ooze out everywhere, although that one kind of did. There we go.
So Danielle, what is it about beets and burrata that just pair well together?
It's that balance. It's that sweet balance. It's the same thing we love when we have tomatoes and mozzarella,
Mm, mm-hmm.
and the burrata, and then another little drizzle of the just very lightly. You can always serve the dressing on the side, right? And people can add if they want. And then if you want, you can do just a little extra sprinkling of the burrata just for garnish. And you could even add, if you have sesame, there's sesame seeds in this za'atar, but you can even put a couple little other ones on top, or you could garnish it with some chopped parsley if you like. Just keep in mind that za'atar has a lot of flavor, so you don't need to add more fresh thyme or oregano or anything on there. Just if you wanted a green pop, another green pop, I would say parsley would be the way to go. So there it is. It's the winter tomato, mozzarella, and basil, and it is scrumptious.
Wow. Now, could this recipe be good with chevre as well?
With chèvre, yes, you could
Uh-huh.
absolutely do it with chèvre. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of
Okay.
people are not goat cheese people.
Yeah.
Personally, I love the combination of beets and goat cheese. I think it's a natural pairing, but
Yeah.
either way. So here we have two fabulous fall dishes all ready for your holiday season, and healthy, fresh, easy to make. Just go to the farmer's market. You can get most of it there. And, you know, take care of yourselves and cook for yourselves. That's an important thing. It really is. And cook for others. We need that.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Danielle. Thank you, thank you. You got a couple folks in the chat saying they may be on their way over. So, but thank you all so
Calm
much for
down.
attending today. Thank you again, Danielle, for sharing your expertise with the USBG and our online audiences. To learn more about our future online program offerings, folks, please visit usbg.gov/programs. If you're local to the DC area, we do encourage you to come by our kitchen garden, see what root veggies we have growing over there. And also note that you'll receive a brief survey in our inbox for this program. Check out those recipes. You can download them in the handout section. We appreciate your feedback. You all, please have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks again, Danielle.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Alrighty, bye-bye.